welcome everyone. Good to see everybody here on this Thursday afternoon. You'll have noticed that I didn't have the problems with the camera this week that I've had the last couple of weeks because I didn't bother to record video locally. I've given up on that now. We're recording audio locally and that's it. So that seems to have sorted out my problems. Thank goodness. Um, it's a snowy day here in the northeast of England. Just 10 minutes outside of Durham. I built a 5-foot snowman this morning, very quickly before I took little man to school. So it's been an interesting day. Seems to have melted, and now it's kind of sleet, rain, horrible thing going on outside the window now. I'm not sure what's going on. And interesting that that's the case outside of my window because having spoken to our guest before the show, Emanuel, welcome to the show. It's a very different case outside of your window, right?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I absolutely envy you. We're having the complete opposite of what you're having. I wish I could just feel the snow that you're feeling out there, but man, we're blistering. We're burning up in this Durban heat. But it's fun. It's it's,
Yeah, if you survive that, you survive anything. It's all right.
yeah.
But you guys are coming out of that now. You're heading towards autumn, so it should start to ease off soon, right?
That's
Autumn.
it. That's it. It's just the humidity though. Like I took a walk to the car park outside of my office, and then I was like, I'm burning up. So it's not as bad, but you certainly do feel it coming out of your office and going with a car park. So yeah, but it's good. It's good. If you can survive in Durban, I think you can survive anywhere.
It's the extremes. Yeah, it's funny. I was watching videos this morning of the snow in California. Obviously, they don't see a lot of snow there, and it's like 3-4 foot shoveling it off the roofs of their cars and showing that to my son. Like, we've got news here in the UK, and like in the south of the country, they've probably got. I mean, there's warnings of up to 40 centimeters of snow. I don't think that's actually happened, but Wiltshire area where they had about 2 or 3 centimeters of snow, and the Wiltshire police were telling everyone to stay home. And my next door neighbours are actually from Wiltshire, and they've just moved up here. And she was like, "Will the schools close?" I was like, "No, no, we don't need it. Even big cold weather up here. When it gets above 4 or 5 inches, then your school might close, but it's unlikely. It's the northeast. We're well accustomed to this weather. Just don't go too far that way because you'll end up in the farmlands. You will get snowed in." Yeah, two extremes, two extremes. But
Absolutely.
great to have you on the show, Emmanuel. Obviously, you're with the Blake Group. Is there business development director? Is that your job title? I can't quite remember your job
Oh,
title.
you could call me whatever you want. It's
I get
but you're
that.
quite close. You're quite close. So, yeah, business development and growth for the group. Um, Man, it's a challenge to wear that hat in this economic climate, not just in South Africa but globally.
Mhm.
But I tell you what, it's fun because you tend to stretch yourself and you tend to become very, very creative when you're in business development. So, that's something that pretty
I
well
know.
about.
I know well. I know well. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's fun to get creative with sales relevant titles because there's a lot of people
absolutely.
who will just shut the door on you just reading your job title, which is
Yeah,
unfair. What I can understand why seeing some of the practices out there. But before we get into too much of that, Emmanuel, like I'd love to hear a little bit of like a potted history of your career because a lot of the people I speak to on this show, it's a very simple answer like, oh, I accidentally fell into contact centers. I've been there for 25 years. I rose through the ranks and I got to a senior level and here I am. And I had a quick read through your LinkedIn and it reads almost the exact opposite of that. So, much like myself, I pivoted into contact centers from a completely different career. I would love to hear some of the story from where you came from and what your background is.
so I mean, definitely it doesn't come from a contact center space, uh, but I wouldn't say it happened by accident. So I've got a background in finance. I started off in investment banking, and then I moved on to corporate banking. I spent about 10 years in one of the corporate banks here in South Africa in the digital banking space. Built a nice career there, and I thought, it's happening. It's great. And then the Blake Group was sort of clients of ours, and then they sort of reached out to me and said, "Listen, we know you. We see you around. What do you think? What do you think we could do? Could we do something together?" And I thought, I don't know. This contact center thing is probably, it's saturated in Durban, and I knew all the contact centers in Durban, but definitely not for me. But we went through the process, and I thought about it. I said, well, listen, I probably need a challenge, and I always love a challenge, right? So I thought about it, and I said, let's go for it. So it's been almost 3 years now. 3 years coming into the contact center space. It
Amazing.
was
And that's pretty much the same time that I joined the contact center space as well. So like,
really,
feel like we have a shared history, Emmanuel. And do you know what? I see you a lot about on LinkedIn, and you're one of the few people that I see on there that genuinely tries to take part in conversations and adds value to what people are saying. And that's part of the reason why I want to invite you on the show, is to kind of give you that opportunity to kind of get in front of some more people and talk to them a little bit more about who you are, because it's rare to meet somebody that understands how to work relationships. I talk to a lot of people. I managed Jimmy Horsang's inbox for quite a while on LinkedIn.
yeah.
Still take care of it a little bit for him. And the way people outreach on especially LinkedIn, but email and phone calls, like, it's just baffles me how any of these businesses manage to drive business, drive success, or actually achieve any of their pipeline. When you hear of all the jobs being lost in the big SaaS industries and things like that, do you know what? I can actually understand why, because we're driving a lot of the time, those businesses driving the wrong behaviors from their people and not even questioning it. I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about sales, I think it's definitely evolved over time. The proverbial thought about salespeople is, the used car salesman guy who's going to call you, penetrate you with these calls and drive you. But I thought, that's probably not the way to do it. And I think a good way to do it, and probably the right way to do it, is to develop those relationships with clients and be genuine about it. And so when I came into this contact center industry and I looked around and I thought, man, this industry is quite small. It's a little hub and everyone knows each other. And here's this new guy who doesn't even come from the industry. I was, for the first 6 months, in in the midst of COVID, I was completely lost for the sake of content. But I thought, let me give it some time and let's see how it works out. So as you said, for me, it's just about getting close to people, genuinely making contacts. And I remember the first interaction you and I had. I actually thought you were spamming me. I was like, heck is this guy? He's reaching out to me. And you reached out to me, I think, on LinkedIn, on Messenger, and then on sales. And I thought, this is just weird. And but then I actually learned quite a bit from you, because I was looking at your content and how you would do things, and I thought, oh, this guy is genuine. So I think we've built a nice relationship over time. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I think people forget how the world is built on people and relationships. And I'll go hold my hand up. When I first started out in the industry, I was guilty of sending some pretty spammy messages. I tried it. I didn't like it. It didn't get the results I wanted. So I stopped doing it. And I think that is probably the difference between the likes of ourselves and a lot of the other people I see out there. Like, you learn from your mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I look back and read some of those messages sometimes, and I scroll back in chat history with people. I'm like, oh my, did I
what was
actually
I
send that?
thinking?
Would work. That's awful. But you've got to try these things to know they don't work, but then learn and move on. And I think you're completely right. Some of the best relationships I've got now, 3 years down the line, like yourself, I started talking to people 2.5 years ago. And every now and then, one of the things I like to do is as I go back through my history of conversations, and I'll just have a look through and look for familiar names. I go, okay, that guy's somebody I spoke to, a year and a half ago. I wonder how they're getting on. And it's that genuine curiosity, not with a sale in mind, but with the curiosity to help people where I can. And I know you're much the same as that. And like, so your predominant industry that you guys work with is collections, right?
That's probably the bulk of the business. And that's where we started off, and 33 years ago in the making. So the group is pretty old in terms of our maturity and what we've done in the market, but we've managed to diversify a bit in terms of the BPO contact center space, as well as software development. But Yeah, pretty much the collections is the bulk of who we are.
It's awesome. So what we'll say is, whilst we're on this show, guys, if anybody wants to kind of ask questions from Emmanuel or myself, okay, this is a live event. It's not pre-recorded. We are actually sat here. It is 15:11, 9th of March in UK time. It's a little, I'm 2 hours ahead of Emmanuel. So
Yeah.
this guy's working overtime right now. He's out of office hours. But if you want to ask
Nothing.
a question,
Yes.
it does come up on the screen. We can answer them. I'll put you up on the screen if I think it's a sensible question. Don't ask silly questions. We'll ask sensible questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. I thought that
Yeah,
until I came onto
that's
LinkedIn.
what they tell you until it's
Very silly
asked.
questions. Yeah. So digging a little bit deeper then, obviously you guys must have, certainly in the time that you've been with the Blake Group, you must have seen some big changes in collections during that time, obviously going through COVID and now into this economic downturn that everybody's going through. So what sorts of differences have you seen in what clients want and how you guys are having to respond to those challenges?
Wow, it's been an absolutely interesting time in the last, probably I say the last year. And what we see is that find there's a spillover coming out of COVID. And if you take a few steps back, we go into COVID. We were in this pandemic where our clients were not sure at all what was going on in the economy. Ourselves were not completely sure. Everyone is just uncertain of what's happening in the economy. And so when our agents would make those calls for debt collection, you'd find a consumer on the other side of the line saying, "Well, I just lost my job. How do you expect me to pay this?" The agent has almost no comeback for that. So it was very challenging. Then our client, who is the credit provider themselves, went through a patch where there were almost no credit applications. So basically, the bucket was drying up. And so some of the clients were able to weather the storm, ourselves as well, because we go back 10, 15 years in relationships with some of these clients. So they stayed with us during that period. Fast forward now, over a year later, we see, the taps are slowly opening up quite a bit. There's a lot more credit that's being extended into the market. But agents are seeing a lot more success in the way we call and recovering those funds. However, the market right now, in terms of the global economy, is under severe, severe strain. What we do see is that the consumer, whether it's just South Africa, the US, UK, is completely under strain when it comes to disposable income,
Yeah.
and you find that they're just not able to meet those short term debts, and that's the common theme that we're seeing during our collections process and our various campaigns, and it goes across various campaigns, whether it's you collecting for a telco, a retailer, a bank, any other financial services industry. You're seeing the disposable income of consumers that are under severe.
Like I was talking with Chris Warburton a couple of weeks back, well, probably a couple of months back now, to be fair. And Chris obviously works in the very much in the consulting in the collection space and debt collection space. And one of the things he mentioned was, when COVID happened, everybody expected customers to go over the edge in terms of their spending and end up in debt. And actually, the reverse happened. A lot of people ended up saving money because they weren't going out, they weren't going and doing things, couldn't do projects. And so they saved that money up. But then what's happened is people have spent a lot of that money afterwards kind of treating themselves because, COVID happened, couldn't get on holiday. We get all this work done, people building remote offices now in the bottom of their gardens, all these sorts of things. And now this second economic downturn's hit probably on, there's lots of different impacting factors. I'm going to get into that. But people's savings have been dried up by the last couple of years. And I suspect there's pretty much nothing for a lot of people to fall back on. So, combine that with the increased utilities costs and the cost of fuel and things like that, I can see why now is a particularly tough time. But that must make extra challenges for yourselves in terms of, if customers don't have that money to pay their debts, regardless of the reason how they got into the situation they're in, that kind of limits the options that you guys have in terms of, because obviously your business is to get that money back to the original debt creditor. How does that impact on you guys then? Does that make your agents' jobs pretty
Yeah,
tough?
it's been pretty tough, but what we seen in terms of our statistics, I think it was probably towards the end of last year, November, the South African market is very different. Like you find towards November and December, we received a lot of payments coming through and we've
Mhm.
collected good amount of money. And if we looked at the stats, basically what it is that the consumer is basically trying to get a buffer in for the December and the holiday uh, spend. So we come into January, we see that now we need to collect on that. We've seen a boost in January and February collections. I think what we'll do is we'll see probably it'll tend to settle a bit now going into March and April, and might just plateau a little bit going into the mid part of the year because we're successful in collecting in Jan and Feb, but as we move into the latter part of the year, things might sort of iron out a bit. Um, but certainly, what you're saying is that the inflation is just driving the state of the economy. And it's not just here in South Africa. I mean, you guys in the UK, I think, what are you sitting around 10% now? The US is about 6.2, South Africa 6.9. So inflation across the globe is just eating into the disposable income of a consumer. It's causing a lot of strain. We feeling it when we calling into the debtors. But what we do is we make arrangements with them. We call it a PTP, which is a promise to pay. And we say, look, sir, we know you owe this amount. Are you willing to make a certain type of arrangement with us that we'll be able to collect? And so we follow up with those calls. The challenge is that you cannot be too harsh with those customers and those clients because, you know, you represent a bigger client at the end of the day. And so you've got to be extremely careful in the way you conduct those calls. What we do um, endeavor to do is simply make soft calls. When we know that there's a debt coming up, we call the consumer and say, listen, sir, we're just giving you a soft reminder that you owe a certain amount. It's due in the next few days. It's a simple reminder. And that's called a soft call, really. It's a friendly reminder, nothing harsh. So it's a matter of rehabilitating those consumers.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, because at the end of the day, if you go too hard in on people who are already in that situation, all you're doing is increasing the stress and pressure that they're in, and the likelihood is you'll end up collecting nothing out of them because they'll just go off the deep
Exactly.
end or refuse to engage with you at all. And you've got to have that relationship. It's behavior breeds behavior. I guess is one of the phrases I was always brought up on in
Yeah.
that center world. But are you guys seeing more of a push from your clients to move towards a data oriented approach with collecting the debts that you guys have to work with? Is it kind of, much more of focus on outstanding debt versus what they're able to repay and total debt accrued, those sorts of things? Is there's a more of a push, or does that kind of come from your clients into you guys?
Yeah, look, we work with various clients in various industries and niches. So the challenge there is probably roughly close to 100 separate clients. They there's never a simple day when it comes to all of these clients. So a bank, for example, will not be exactly the same as another bank. One would think, well, it's a bank, it's a bank, it's a bank. Not really. They have their own strategies in place. So when they would say to us, we're giving you this sort of target, and this is what we want you to collect on. We're giving you these are your KPIs. Work on it. So in house, we'll just develop a strategy based on that. Whether it's the PTP type of amount that we need to collect on, whether it's looking at trying to cure that customer over a period of time, but it's very specific, a single campaign that the client really comes to us and say, we need this done.
It's interesting. It's interesting. One of the things that we kind of discussed during lockdown was, there was this big conversation around service levels were increasing. There was less people in the offices to do what they needed to do because of sickness and attrition and all the rest of the jazz. Um, and we were discussing around, now's the perfect time to be building relationships with your customers. So to your point around the soft calls, really, like not just calling them when you need to get them to make a payment or the past that point where they make a payment, almost getting to be on their side, be seen as their trusted advocate that they can
Yeah.
rely on to go, all right, these guys actually, this business is trying to help me as much as I can. and I know I'm in a tough position, but I'm gonna help that business out first and get that debt cleared first, because I know I can trust them and I like them enough, and
Mm.
I don't get badgered all the time by them. But I guess it's a fine line to balance between sort of building that relationship and getting the job done, which is ultimately the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So what
So
other sorts of things are you guys involved in outside of collections then? Because you do like lots of service as well, right? Or you're starting to do more service, I should say.
we're doing a lot more, right? So as I said, the collections business is the bulk of what we do, and we are revered and almost feared and respected in the market for being debt collectors. But the part of the business that's growing nicely is our contact center BPO work across the US and Australia as well. So we've done a lot of work. That part of the business is growing pretty well, and of course, we're always looking to grow much more. We've got managing executives in that business that are in BPO contact centers for over 20 plus years, very, very well seasoned, respected, understood. And so that part of the business will grow. Um, I think in total we have roughly about 2,300 agents at the moment across 5 sites
Mhm.
in South Africa. So always an opportunity to grow. It's,
Absolutely, absolutely. I
yeah,
think there's probably a big push right now, as there was really during COVID. I think people realised too late during COVID that they needed to diversify their service offering. So it's not always just a case of we need to push things out to a player in South Africa because we want to labour arbitrage and we want to do things cheaper or more efficiently or whatever. It's also now about actually we want a couple of seats out in South Africa, but we want a couple of seats near shore in America. We want some guys out in Philippines.
absolutely.
Kind of
Absolutely.
prevent and protect the business a little bit more. So I guess that probably makes the initial conversations a little bit easier for you guys now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we are receiving quite a bit of inquiries when it comes to South Africa. People are saying, well, we've heard about South Africa. I spoke to a guy from the US about 3 weeks ago. He said to me, I cannot believe I've never heard of South Africa in the contact center industry before. I said, well, we've been around for a bit. Where have you been? But I think, coming back to your point, it's not this thinking where, well, we're looking for a low cost provider. Let's go to South Africa. It's absolutely not that. What we are is a quality provider. And if you're hearing the accent, this is what you're getting basically coming out of South Africa. So it's a quality initiative. There's a guy by the name of Peter Ryan. I'm sure you know him. He's done this study. South Africa is the best CX offshore location provider for the next 2 years, 21 and 22. We all know that. But the fallacy is to think, well, it's a low cost provider. I think we're quite competitive, but we're not looking for this cheap type of enterprise. We're gonna give you the quality
Right.
that you deserve.
Yeah.
Uh, we ourselves in the Blake Group, look, I think we're probably looking for good quality work as well. And we are in a position sometimes to look at the type of client and say, well, you're just fishing for margins, you're looking for price.
Yeah.
I don't think we're in that type of game because uh, come back 6 months later, you're just trying to shave us off anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's a good position to be in because, I hear of conversations where clients are refusing to pay for training time and break times and holidays and all the rest of the jazz. And it's like, look, genuinely think it's short-sighted choices. I've talked about this before. Senior leaders globally are in their position much less time than they've ever been, and certainly when you've got shareholders behind you, they want results now. And the temptation is to make these sorts of decisions, outsource on the cheap to the cheapest that you can get. The sad thing is that you're not looking forward to like the next 2-3 years of customer lifetime value and where your NPS, your CSAT, and your customer
right,
experience are going to sit as a result. And that takes so much more to pull back than dealing with the consequences in the meantime of that maybe a slightly tighter financial situation, but much better customer service. Um, do you find a lot of the challenge for you guys at the moment is in helping the clients understand the business case much better? and almost helping them create their own business case as opposed to them coming to you with something and you just agreeing with it.
Yeah, it's a bit of both there. I mean, you find there's clients that have a business case at the moment and say, well, we're trying to do X, but we're not sure how to actually do it.
Mm.
And then that just completely opens up an opportunity for the team to look at it and say, well, we could probably do it this way. Like right now, we're busy with a client. It's a massive, massive client in the financial services space. It's a global, and they came to us and saying, well, we're not sure what to do with this. Can you assist us? That's a different set of variables. Then you find a client who actually knows what they're doing and in the space to say, well, we're basically just shopping around for price. And those ones are interesting ones because we would probably price around a certain benchmark, competitors. And if we win it, we win it. If we're not, it's fine. But we received quite a few different inquiries from clients. I released a post recently from a client in the US, and he had one interaction with one of our agents, and he had something fantastic to say about the agent. Just listening to her on the call, it was his first time ever engaging with a South African agent, and he thought, "Wow, this is amazing."
Yeah,
I posted that screenshot of the email on it. And that's basically it. It's not a matter of this is the cheap destination. And people were thinking, well, you're load shedding and you've got this power outages. But let me tell you this, we work with load shedding like clockwork. We know exactly when the power is going off. We've got an app for it. We work it like clockwork. So,
yeah,
and we've got backup generators. We've got everything in place. So there's no sort of disruption to work. There's
perfect.
no.
Yeah, it's just forward thinking and strategy, right? And you don't get to 2,300 agents without having that sort of strategy and forethought. So, and
Right.
I remember when we first spoke, probably a couple of years ago, and you were somewhere near half that size. So you've done incredibly well over the last couple of years to bring those forward. Um, and it sounds like you've got a lot on the pipeline to come forward as well. So fantastic to hear a bit of a success story on the show as well. And couldn't have a nicer guy on the show to chat with me about. So, guys, if you're watching the show and you haven't connected with Emmanuel on LinkedIn, please do, because he's one of the few guys that I see out there that works really hard at building network and genuinely helping people. So,
Yeah.
I can't recommend you high enough.
And it's not just about selling, right? I mean, I think when people look at your title, they think, oh, business development. This guy, 5 minutes later after we connect, he's going to send me a pitch. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I would never send you a pitch.
Yeah,
I'm all about building relationships. And that's something that I've brought into the group to say, well, yes, we understand the business needs to grow, but look at the longevity of it. We're looking at growing the business, not just financially, but in our reputation and who we are, and also our network, right? I mean, you, for example, you and I have been chatting for a long time, and you've grown your network. And for me to see you doing this, I'm really proud of you. And it, from where you've come, and it's good. You've built your network, and that's essentially what we're all trying to do, right?
it's fun, and not everybody can do that. That's the thing. Is like not everybody enjoys having those personal relationships with people and putting themselves out there to do that. But it just takes a certain sort of person. It's not something I'm proud of. It's just kind of it's who I am, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to be who I want to be now, as opposed to being stuck in corporate where I perhaps had to wear a different hat and be guarded in terms of who I was. Um, well, look, Emmanuel, it's been fantastic to chat with you today. It's a really interesting, very different conversation to what I'm used to having on the show, and very welcome change. Um, hopefully we'll see you again on the show in another while, and we'll hear an update as to how you guys have been getting on. Thanks very much for coming
Paul,
on.
yeah, Paul, it's been awesome, man. So, I mean, if I'll probably be attending a conference in the US at the end of April. So if anyone from your show is listening, you're welcome to come say hi in Vegas, and probably in New York, come say hi. We'll catch up, we'll have a coffee, and yeah, we'll talk about South Africa and have
Cheers
some
and
fun.
beer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great to catch up. Have a fantastic Thursday evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world, or Thursday morning, I guess, if you're in Australia. Um, very early. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.